Hello everyone, and welcome to the first ever Absurd Point of View. In only a few weeks, Zendikar Rising, the next Magic the Gathering set, will be released upon the world. And between now and then, it's going to be Spoiler City. And by the way, yours truly actually gets to spoil a card this time around. I'm so excited. So I am here today to talk about Zendikar Rising and what you may expect when the spoilers finally do get dropped. Are you ready? Let's do this. One of the biggest questions that players usually ask when considering a new set and whether it will be fun or not is, what are the planeswalkers going to be, and is Teferi going to be one of them? I'm happy to say that no, Teferi has already had his time in the sun this year, and Wizards surely won't be giving him another chance. You know, in theory. However, there is another planeswalker that sometimes causes just as much trouble that I do expect to see in Zendikar Rising. Can you guess which one it is? Jace Beleren will be rotating out of Standard completely this fall, and I'm pretty sure that Wizards just won't stand for that. Not to mention that during the writing of the script, they actually released promotional material that showed Jace Beleren on the box. So you're going to see him there. It's confirmed. While not a native to Zendikar, Jace actually has a lot of history with the plane. As the one who, you know, released the Eldrazi from their Hedron prison 5 years ago, causing massive destruction across the plane and killing millions of inhabitants, he actually has some feelings about it. I'm not surprised in the slightest to see the Mind Mage get involved. I actually expected it. Also, another little lore tidbit here, during the events of the Battle of Zendikar, the last time that we were on the plane, Jace and Gideon met for the very first time and eventually formed their little band of super friends, also known as the Gatewatch. It is worth noting that other planeswalkers were there at the time, but they decided that becoming a member of the interplanar version of the Avengers was not exactly what they wanted and decided to fuck right off. The original Gatewatch team was comprised of 4 planeswalkers: Gideon, Jace, Chandra, and Nissa. Nissa, being a Zendikar native, will most assuredly make her way into the set. While Zendikar was lush and wild before it was ravaged by Ulamog, I wouldn't be surprised if Wizards decided to bring some of that back and make Nissa into somewhat of a elemental lord. Or on the other hand, they can make her an elf lord like she used to be, but that is probably just me dreaming. Other planeswalkers of note that could make their way into the set are Nahiri and Kiora. Both are originally from Zendikar, and we haven't seen proper planeswalker cards from either of them in years, not including the promo box versions. So out of these two, I'm really hoping for Nahiri. Hers is a long and a tragic story, and I would really like to see it fleshed out a little bit more. Other than, you know, her undying hatred for Sorin. Although on the other hand, I wouldn't really mind the two of them just duking it out across the plains for all eternity, so I could really just go either way with it. So we've talked about who is going to be there. Why don't we talk about what is going to be there? Zendikar has a lot of very interesting creature types, including the Core, a very pale, white-skinned humanoid creature type that has a lot of aura and enchantment synergies. I wouldn't be surprised to see most of the white creatures in the set be Core, especially if we see the return of Nahiri, who is also Core. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. We're also expecting to see angels, as yes, angels do exist on Zendikar. And we've already had the pleasure of seeing spoiled angel artwork, and holy shit, it looks amazing. It's so gorgeous. This is gorgeous. I love this. I love everything about this. I, for one, am hoping to see a lot of angels in this set because we do have a lot of angel synergy in Standard right now that has not really been seen a lot of play because there just aren't enough angels to actually make it a deck in Standard. Angels are a rather rare creature type, so I'm not really expecting this to happen, but it is just kind of my own personal plea. So please, Wizards, please just put angels in the set. Vampires, merfolk, goblin, and elves should also be in the set, as well as humans, of course, because humans are just like sand and they get everywhere. Somehow, I'm not quite sure how that works, but you know. They get around, I guess. Since goblins are currently being played heavily in Historic, I don't think that there are going to be any really amazing goblin cards coming out in Zendikar Rising. Probably just more red card fodder. Vampires, on the other hand, should be getting some pretty cool cards, including at least one legendary, as is traditional in other Zendikar sets. But unfortunately for vampire enthusiasts, Sorin, the Great Enabler, within Standard, will be rotating out at the exact same time that this set comes out. So unless there are some incredibly insane vampire additions, I don't see a tribal vampire deck making its way into the meta anytime soon. Historic may be a different story, but I will leave that up to the Historic experts. Merfolk might be a different kettle of fish. We've seen them ride the waves since the Ixalan block came and went. So it might be time to see them start to grace the Standard shores again. I'm sorry, that's the last of it, I promise. You can usually take a guess at the Standard archetype tides from looking at the core set for the year. And core set 2021 saw a grand total of 3 merfolk, and they were all creatures. Yes, they were all blue merfolk creatures, and there were 3 of them. But let's be serious. Merfolk have been a staple of Magic the Gathering for about 25 years. So really, it's only a matter of time till they come back, and I think that Zendikar is probably just a fine place to start. Another major creature type you can be sure to see is elementals. Omnath, now known as Locus of the Royal, was originally printed as Locus of Mana and then Locus of the Rage, and is about to rotate out with M20. As a legendary creature of the plane and a consistent lord of a major creature type on Zendikar, it's almost guaranteed that we will see a return of the big green monster. And since we're talking about Omnath, we might as well just go straight into the mechanics segment. Omnath itself once featured a much-loved keyword that I myself thought was brilliant, and we haven't seen in Standard since the last time that we went to Zendikar 5 years ago. Landfall. Landfall is a mechanic that triggers whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. And as you may have noticed if you watched my latest quest video, which attempted to play 30 lands in one game, there is an excruciatingly small amount of support for this kind of mechanic. However, that also means that there is limited support for breaking the mechanic, which means that it is the perfect time to enter it back into Standard. And let me be clear here, I'm not saying that there is no support for Landfall in Standard right now. There is. We have Azusa Lost But Seeking, the Dryad of the Elysian Grove, and everybody's absolutely 100% favorite 3-drop of all time, which I'm sure we all have 4 of because you basically cannot climb the ladder without it right now. But while these are all cards that allow us to play additional cards on our turn, there is no way of currently in Standard for us to get cards back into our hand from the battlefield, other than Living Twister, which is rotating away when Zendikar Rising comes out. So in other words, I think that right now, Standard is perfectly set up to have Landfall return once again. And I, for one, am looking forward to it. And speaking of lands, there are some very important landy things going on here right now. Our dual lands, our beloved shock lands from Ravnica, are going to be rotating when Zendikar comes out. And this is very important. These will not be coming back with Zendikar. They're not going to be reprinted with Zendikar. I repeat, there will not be shock lands printed in Zendikar, and this is really important because that means that we don't have any dual lands that come into play untapped, which means a lot for any aggro deck like Rakdos Sack or Is It Spells. Those kind of decks that really need to have those dual lands come out on turn 1 are just not going to have them anymore, which means we're going to need some sort of something with Zendikar to fill the void. Historically, Zendikar has answered these questions with a couple of dual lands of their own, one being Tango lands, lands that come into play tapped unless you already control 2 basic lands. Get it? Tango lands, as in it takes 2 to tango? Yes, I know that Wizards calls them battle lands officially, but you know what? Tango lands is just more fun, and the word tango is more informative as to what the card actually does, so I am going to be calling them Tango lands. Thank you very much for asking. So as you may have surmised, Tango lands don't actually solve the problem of dual lands coming down on turn 1 untapped, which still causes a problem with any early aggro decks that need 2 lands in order to function properly. And I know that changes of dual lands might seem small and innocuous, but I really do think that this changes the meta if it's not solved properly. Competitive decks just need the consistency that untapped dual lands will give you. Another land type that Zendikar once gave us was fetch lands, and they caused so much trouble historically that I'd be very surprised if they ever came back, but you know, they might. And you're probably thinking, absurd Heroine, what's so wrong about fetch lands? We already have 2 of them in Standard right now. What's the problem with adding another 10? I do understand that in Standard right now, miracles do not exist, which was the biggest problem that they created for players. And Mayhem Devil is rotating out, so maybe it won't be that big of a problem after all, and there's nothing to worry about. It certainly would be gas for Landfall, and for Wizards, because both Tango lands and fetch lands would most assuredly be rare. And you could search for Tango lands with your fetch lands, making them all required, so you know, there goes 80 rare wildcards. Obviously, they wouldn't release all of these lands in one set, but that would be more or less a land theme coming out over the next year or so. Another land prediction that I could see happening on a more probable level but wouldn't solve our untapped land problems is a mirroring of Ikoria's Triomes. The Triomes only cover Magic's wedges, that is, Abzan, Sultai, Jeskai, Mardu, and Timur. The other 5 color combinations, Bant, Esper, Jund, Naya, and Grixis, also known as Shards, should be releasing at some time. And while Zendikar, after being ravaged by the Eldrazi, might not be the same lush landscape that Ikoria provides, it really depends on Wizards wants to take the story and needs to take the card design. So there you have it. Those are my predictions for Zendikar Rising. What do you think? Do you think my predictions are good? Do you think they are shit? Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, if you enjoy my videos, make sure that you like and subscribe, and if you really like what I do here and you want to see more of it, you can become a patron and help out the channel. Also, you can join our Discord and just hang out and be a friend. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, as I enjoyed making this video for you, and until the next time that we meet, good luck in all of your games. Ciao.